Sirens go off during an air raid drill. People take shelter where appropriate, which is usually the basement of a building. What would have been a routine exercise now appears more realistic than ever. In the past, there wasn't any spacious basements for people to hide in, but tiny and dark tunnels and trenches. Larger ones can accommodate a few hundred individuals, but smaller ones only 3 to 4. At Keelung's Winan Burough, entrances to these air raid shelters can be seen along the hillside, but most are padlocked. We gained access to the borough's community development organization, who helped borrow the keys from the Maritime and Port Bureau, which oversees the shelter's management. We did not expect the shelter to be almost an entire story high. At the entrance, eroded signboards hint at age of these shelters. We also did not expect to see this, another shelter within a shelter. It feels like an adventure entering the tunnel. There's nothing but darkness ahead.
This is what people refer to when they say it's a different world entirely inside a cave. It does feel more comfortable and secure in this space.
The shelters were dug by coal miners in the past, and excavation marks can still be seen along the hillside. Although it's pitch dark inside the cave, to keep those hiding safe, there are ditches to drain water from the mountain wall. It's also very well ventilated. Even though it's over 35 degrees outside, the inside of the shelter feels air-conditioned and very comfortable.
We're taking the route at the back. There's another at the front that takes you directly to the exit.
Taiwan's air raid shelters can be traced back to 1944, when Taiwan got involved in World War II during the Japanese colonial period. Many shelters were dug along the hillside to provide a hideout from U.S. bombings. Because Keelung is a hilly area on relatively durable Daliao rock formation, the shelters can survive bombing. According to the city's yearbook, there were more than 600 air raid shelters at the time, the highest number in Taiwan.
When the U.S. warplanes approached from Wanli, they began mass firing. The munitions hit the walls, but nothing terrible happened.
Being a harbor city at the front line of war, we must dig many tunnels for hiding. Because of high population density, the bombing was more frequent. That's why there are so many tunnels.
The end of World War II restored peace, and the air raid shelters eventually lost their purpose and became neglected. Today, only the part used as a commanding center during the war is still in use by the police as the city's civil defense center. 6 officers work at the center, taking turns in shifts round the clock to take orders from the National Police Agency to practice issuing air raid or tsunami alerts.
At specific times, they call upon us and we respond. There are also 2 irregular calls that we must answer in addition.
Normally, officers are on duty here round the clock. They hold drills on issuing and transmitting alerts every day.
A community learning center lecturer gives us a guided tour at the historic air raid shelter under the Kusu Song Old House, the residence of a Japanese-era local governor, equivalent to a modern-day Keelung mayor. Due to his official standing, the air raid shelter was built for his safety. From the material used, red bricks covered in plaster, is noticeably grander than most shelters from that period.
让他们知道真正的历史并不是希望因参加战争，是希望因会使避开战争。就不要什么事。
We want kids to learn about wartime history, not to encourage them to go to war, but to avoid war. Not everything must be resolved with war. It's a kind of education.
To reconnect the city with the shelters, a student at National Taiwan University's Graduate Institute of Building and Planning conducted field studies on historical air-raid shelters in Keelung and even built this true-to-size model of the shelter under the Kusu Song Old House at a scale of 1 to 100.
对这个入来，对这个洞口入来，入来就你看会到。
We entered from here, from this entrance. You can see after you enter that this tunnel is connected to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other entrances. The older generation, the grandmas nearby, say that it can shelter 300 people at most.
不要让它荒废在那个地方，变成一个自然死角。
We shouldn't abandon them and have them become a safety and environmental blind spot. They should be revitalized and turned into educational venues for promoting local culture.
This is a century-old air raid shelter in Winan Burough. The borough chief revitalized this space stretching 100 meters, paving the pathway with cement and installing light fixtures. It used to be unbearably filthy and an infamous hideout for drug users. But now it's an exhibition quarter with noticeable foot traffic in the local community.
我们做了这个以后，很多学校的学生都来这边上课，那让学生知道在地的文化。
After we started doing this, many schools would have kids come visit and allow school kids to learn about the local culture. If we can truly pass it on to the next generation, it would be a boon for society.
这个没人有的，只有你。
Many Keelung residents along the hillside have an air raid shelter hidden behind them. The Winan Burough chief is also a historian. He gave us a tour at a residential air raid shelter.
我这边土生土长的啊，所以小时候都会乱跑乱玩的。
I was born and raised here. When I was young, we would run around and play here. There are many air raid shelters here. Back in the days, the kids all played hide and seek here.
那么小，你看。
It takes considerable building material and labor to refill the redundant shelters. What's more, President armaments are now more destructive and precise than before.
炸弹跟枪炮这些有用。
These air raid shelters are effective against bombs and gun munitions because the explosions weren't so powerful then, but they're no use against missiles or anything of the sort.
What if the unimaginable really happens? Will the old air raid shelters be designated for wartime use?
因为那个防空洞都超过。
Because the air raid shelters have all exceeded the 30-year safe use limit for brick structures, it's unlikely they'll be designated for wartime use.
还是可以避啊，还是可以避难啊。
They still function as shelters. We didn't cause damage to them. The structure is still intact. We only cleaned them up a little. No damages.
The numerous early air raid shelters of the past no longer have any function and require considerable manpower and funds to manage. Therefore, in 2019, the Ministry of Interior delisted the air raid shelters and gradually returned them to the landowners. Most of them were fenced off and padlocked, and the memory of war gets locked away too in darkness.
平常讲，那些游民自然而然就会去破坏它。
To be frank, the homeless will eventually cause damage to the shelters, and they also hide inside to live. That may actually lead to more societal problems.
回归到社区，社区的经费允许怎么做就怎么做。
The decision rests upon the local community. The local community does whatever the budget allows. If there isn't enough budget, we can submit a proposal for a community design or cultural development project, and then the government can finance the project in part or entirely, and will make the best managed use of the site.
Some are already taking steps in revitalizing these spaces. In this former shelter, halogen lamps fixed upon the pillars cast a warm glow on foreign cuisine on offer.
就没有特别的状况，因为 其实它就是它的特色。
I didn't renovate the space much because the original state is part of the charm. We've only reinforced leaky spots.
Restaurant owner Miao Shujing was born in 1988, long after the war has ended. She wasn't particularly fond of the air raid shelters. As a child, her impression was that it's where water snakes and other frightening creatures dwell. She was worried that her restaurant would have spiders, frogs, or insects pop up here and there are, but her customers don't seem to mind.
有时候客人还蛮可爱的，就还跟我们一起说：“那边有。”
My customers are quite adorable. They'd say to us, "Look, there's an adorable critter over there. Should we go catch it?" Before we revamped the space, there were cascades from the mountains, well, waterfalls. Whenever it rains heavily, the water will enter from there and cause flooding.
Only simple waterproofing is done to retain the original state, but when it rains heavily, there will still be leakage and the restaurant will be forced to close. Now that she's gained experience revitalizing an old air raid shelter, she knows what to look out for.
如果你要进驻餐厅，或者是你要做一些就是文创类的话，其实都有。
If you want to set up a restaurant or a creative space, humidity is a great challenge. Artworks and handicrafts could get damaged.
Once locked away in darkness, these air raid shelters are seeing the light again in a whole new way.